Hey, what's going on YouTube? Welcome back to the channel. In this episode, we're going to be replacing the timing chain on this Toyota 1ZZ-FE. Let's get to it. So like I just mentioned, this is the 1ZZ-FE engine out of most commonly Toyota Matrixes, Pontiac Vibes, Toyota Corollas, and Geo Metros. This 1ZZ-FE was a great Toyota engine, and they surely last up to like 300,000 miles. But there is some general maintenance that you usually want to do to these engines, and some of that maintenance is the timing chain. The timing chain on these sometimes like to stretch, or they jump a tooth, or anything like that. A cog horn, I mean, it can be a number of things. So we like to go ahead and change out these timing chains whenever we get a chance to. We got this engine from the salvage yard. I went and pulled this engine myself, and we want to throw this into a future project, but we are going to take this chance to actually show you guys how to replace the timing chain. So we're going to go ahead and jump into this. We'll do a step-by-step on how to disassemble it, some keynotes on the tools you'll need, and then also how to reassemble it and make sure everything's lined up. So let's go ahead and jump into this and start taking apart this engine. So Kyle's going to go ahead and perform the duties while I show you guys what he's doing. So right now he's taking out the bolts of the coil packs. The coil packs need to come out first, and then there's going to be two bolts located between the two most outer coil packs. After he gets those taken out, he's going to move it around the valve cover to take out the rest of the 10mm bolts that hold it down. So now with all those bolts taken out from the valve cover and coil packs, we can go ahead and remove the coil packs and attempt to get the valve cover up off the cylinder head. Please use caution when taking this up, just in case you are going to reuse this valve cover gasket. And also you don't want to damage the mating surface of the cylinder head to the valve cover. Now with that taken loose, we can go ahead and take that off, and as you can see, the valve cover gasket is coming with it for the most part, and then I just got to take it off the rest of the way. It would be the most opportune time to replace that valve cover gasket while you have the valve cover off. Also, while the valve cover is off, it's a perfect time to go ahead and take a look at the top of the engine here. You can go ahead and see if you got a lot of sludge buildup or the color of all your internals here. We have a nice golden color, which actually could signify this has regular oil changes and everything like that. You can also take a look at the timing chain to see how much play is in it. Depending on where it's at, it will determine how much play it has too, because tension could be greater in some areas. But this is actually looking really, really good. And we'll go ahead and move on to the front side of the engine here, where all the accessories and pulleys would be.
So now we're going to move over to the front of the engine. We're going to start with the tensioner assembly here, then we're going to move over to the motor mount, we're going to pull off the harmonic balancer, and then finally we're going to pull off the water pump, and we're going to do that all in that order right now. 17mm on the large bolt of the tensioner. I'm going to hand these to Chad here so we don't get lost. 12mm for the top bolt of the tensioner. Moving over to the engine mounts, we've got three 14mm bolts that we need to get out of the way. Harmonic balancer bolt is next. We're going to use a 19mm. Might have to use a little persuasion to get it off. And then finally the water pump here, we're going to switch over to a 10mm and take those 4 bolts out on the water pump. Sorry, 6 bolts. With all the bolts out of the way, thrown on the ground properly, we're just going to take a rubber mallet, give it a little tap, water pump comes off. We're going to give it an inspection. So we see here, we see a little bypass. Probably would not be a terrible idea to put a new gasket in here because we can see we've actually got some coolant leakage around. And then finally, the harmonic balancer, little tap, and it is out of the way now. All right, before we get started pulling these bolts out of this front timing cover, there's 2 bolts I want to bring to your attention. And the first one is here on the crankshaft position sensor, and the other one is up here on the harness bracket for it. We've gone ahead, obviously the motor is outside of the vehicle, we've disconnected the harness. You can actually leave these 2 bolts in because it'll actually come with the full valve cover, or I'm sorry, the timing chain cover itself when we take everything apart. So we're going to start with the 10mm bolts all the way around, and then we're going to finish with the 3 bolts of the 12mm style and pull this thing apart. All right, we're just doing a last final check before we start tugging on this thing, making sure we have all of the nuts and all of the bolts out to make sure this valve or this timing cover assembly comes out nice and easy. All right, before we go start tugging on this thing, we're gonna pull these 2 nuts off, which our timing chain tensioner is directly behind it. So we're gonna pull this plate off as soon as we get these 2 10mm bolts out of the way. There it is. So here is your timing chain tensioner assembly. You'll see you'll have a small lever. This is going to come into play on the reinstallation of them. We'll show you how that works when we go back together with it. Now it comes time to pull the timing cover off of it. I went and grabbed a brass drift. This metal is going to be softer than anything you're going to be hammering on. So this is going to mar before any of our material will. Out of the vehicle, it's always good to have somebody standing by. As you tap this thing, it could go flying and hit the floor, possibly break. Inside the vehicle, if you're doing this, it's a little less of a concern. So Chad's gonna step here in front and I'm going to gingerly tap this thing loose and see what we can get this thing apart. And as you can see, as the timing cover has come off, we still have our pigtail for our crankshaft position sensor. And we've seen that somebody has been in here with a little RTV in the past. We'll get that cleaned up before we get it all put back together. Timing chain cover is out of the way and we have full view. We had things kind of slightly rotate when we took the pin out, so we're going to show you how to get this thing back in alignment once everything is disassembled. So to start that disassembly, we need to take that tone ring, carefully set it off to the side. 12mm here on the tensioner guide. Pull that apart. Then 10mm on the guide rail. And you slide those out of the way. Retaining all the bolts. And you can jockey out your chain from there. Chain down off the top, we now pull the sprocket away, and that's going to release the chain and the sprocket assembly. And your chain and sprocket are now removed from the engine. We've got the chain out of the way now, we've got the sprocket off, now it's time to focus on the exhaust valve. We're going to replace the sprocket because our kit comes with it. Our kit does not include the variable valve timing on the intake side of it. Some kits will, and it will walk you through the process of replacing this variable valve timing section. Our kit is just going to do the exhaust side, and we're going to get that replaced right now with a 14 millimeter. We're going to zip this bolt out, make sure our keyway lines up, and then we'll get this thing put back together.
So let's go ahead and take a chance to see what our new kit comes with. So we picked up this kit off of Amazon here. This kit is a pretty generic kit, and it's going to be everything that you need to replace your timing chain and tensioners and guides on this 1ZZ-FE. So first off, we got the timing chain tensioner, brand new, and also both guides. Both guides come with the plastic rails. We also have the new chain that is all colored marked for your camshafts and your crankshaft. A new front seal, that's very helpful, especially on that timing chain cover. Got a new front sprocket, and we have a new exhaust sprocket. We will be linking this down in the description below. Please make sure to hit the link to pick up this kit. We'll also show another kit or show separately the variable valve timing side of the intake, just in case you need that part too. But we'll have everything we use here in the video down in the description below, and make sure you go pick those up. So let's go ahead and bounce back over to Kyle, and he'll start showing you how to reassemble this.
Our exhaust sprocket, we have a keyway here, and on the valve train itself, we've got another key. Those two line up. They pop right back into place, and then we simply put that 14 millimeter back in and tighten her down. All right, now I know you guys watched me hit this down with an impact. It wasn't on full speed. We're gonna get the torque specs on here, and we're gonna torque all of the bolts properly off of camera. That way we don't waste your time. If you want those torque specs, drop a link in the comments, and then we will hit you back with the torque specs for those specific bolts. But we're gonna move forward. We're gonna scrape off the mating surfaces, make sure those are good, and then we're gonna get the rest of this timing chain assembly put back into place. Getting this old gasket material off, we're gonna utilize two different scrapers. We've got a hard build scraper for this larger stuff that's gonna be a little more troublesome to get off, but we also have the trusty, just razor blade scraper, and we're gonna go to town, and we're gonna fast forward through this again, not to bore you guys too much with the details. Everything is scraped off now, and we've got mostly a smooth surface. We can fill in some of these crevices here with some RTV when we put this back together. But we'll show you as we set this thing back into place the particular locations where RTV is going to be more important than others. So as for right now, we're going to get some guides set in place. We're going to get the, before we get the guides set in place, we're going to get the timing set up and the locations marked. Make sure we get that on camera for you guys so you can identify where those belong. When getting the timing marks lined up, there's going to be two things to take into consideration. Number one of the marks, they're not very visible. So what I like to do, even when working alone, is just to take a paint pen and to exaggerate those marks in which we're going to line up. That way it's a little more visible for me. That way we know we're spot on. Second thing, when working by yourself, Toyota does make a specific tool. The cam locking tools that you can put in once you have these two in spec. But I have me a Chad, and he's going to be my cam holding tool for this video. So I'm going to spin these over very carefully to make sure that none of the valves hit the top of the pistons while we're rotating. So once those are marked in place and Chad's going to hold those in, we're going to quickly move down and set the main crankshaft. We're going to use the timing wheel, but you can also use this keyway down here. This keyway is going to be lined up directly with this dot, and that will be top dead center on the crankshaft. And once those two are lined up, then we'll be able to put our guides and our chain on and make sure that Chad doesn't get too worn out holding those into place. Let's get to it. We've got the exhaust side mostly lined up the best we can without the holders in place. The mark on the intake is on the bottom. You may not be able to see it on frame. So we're going to put a 14 millimeter on front, and we're going to spin this into place. It's going to jump slightly, so we're going to put it backwards. As I spin it backwards, Chad is going to hold it with a 23 and a 24 millimeter. 24 on the intake, 23 on the exhaust. And give me just a little bit towards you on the exhaust, Chad. Oh, other way. This one. Right there. Right there, we're dead lined up. With the valve train up top set into place, we're going to set top dead center. We're going to run the bolt in with our 19 millimeter to get it snugged down. Then we're going to put it on a ratchet, and we're going to spin it to where that keyway is up to top dead center, right there. We're going to pull that bolt back out and start reassembling the chain sections. All right, while you're getting this chain set into place now, you're going to notice that we've got two different colors. We've got yellow on top, and then we have orange on the bottom here. The yellow on top is going to be the indicators, the two dots on the exhaust, and the single dot on the intake. And then your orange is going to be on the bottom sprocket. Let's get that set into place. Goes there, goes up and over. So before we move on and get this final set in place, you'll notice the yellow keys here at the top are indicated with the dot here on the intake side and the dual dots on the exhaust. And there is a single dot on the camshaft sprocket, the crankshaft sprocket, indicated by the orange key. So with everything set in place now, we're going to put tension on this side, which will give us a little bit of slack here on this side, which will allow us to get our tensioner set into place, and we'll do that shortly. We've got the two guides in place now. We're going to run the crank bolt in briefly just so we can get the tension from the right side over to the left side here a little more, allowing us to get that tensioner into place. Make sure we don't chop it. Next step in the process is getting your reluctor wheel put back into place. The F on the front is for front. You slide that over, and you want to make sure this is in place, because without this, you will not be able to start this engine. Moving forward would be the time we put RTV all the way around this timing cover. Main surfaces you want to make sure you have great coverage are going to be between the head and the block on both sides, all the way around your water pump housing, and then also down here at the mating surface for your upper oil pan and the block on both sides, and then a light bead all the way around just for good sealing purposes. We're going to get that main cover put on now, and then we'll start on the tensioner after that. Timing cover is getting ready to go back on. This would be the point that you would put in your new gasket for your front crank seal. here. It comes with the kit. We do not have our replacement O-ring or our new water pump in stock yet, so we're gonna wait to actually put our RTB sealant on it because this does have to come back apart, and we wanna make sure this is done properly, but one time.
So Kyle's going around right now and hand starting all of the bolts that go into the timing chain cover. Hand starting them is beneficial so that way you don't cross thread anything. Very nice way to make sure you don't have any mistakes along the way. So we're just going to go ahead and put all of these in. Again, since we don't have that bead of RTV around here, we're just going to snug them up and not torque them down. We'll try to have those torque specs down in the description below, but if we don't have them, please drop that comment down in the comment section and get after us. So we're just going to go ahead and just zap them down a little bit. That way they are all snug and we can keep moving forward.
This is our tensioner for our timing chains. You see here, we've got the clasp that runs up and over the pin, and this is loaded down, meaning that all of the pressure, you can see me here, just kind of briefly move it. What we're gonna do is we're gonna install it into our port, tighten the two nuts down on these studs, and then we're gonna run a screwdriver down and simply unlatch this, and you're gonna hear it pop as we get this thing installed. So we've got a line in here so you can see a little bit of that clevis pin. We've just got a flat blade screwdriver that we're gonna put on top of the tensioner guide itself. And then we're just gonna give it a little soft tap with the wrap of the palm, and you're gonna hear it pop into place.
So that went ahead and tensioned down. I'll go ahead and show you where that clevis popped out once Kyle pushed that down. So let's go on a journey here. Try to see it down in here. Right there, you can see the clevis. It got dislodged from that tensioner, and you can see that it's open now. So that means the tension is now on the guide rail.
All right, as we stated before, we don't have our new O-ring or the water pump in stock yet, but we will have links to those in the description below. There is one thing to note here. We have a hole here and a hole here that you can see that the threads are a little closer to the surface. That is going to be for our shorter bolts. And when we put those in, we're actually going to start with those two to make sure we have them in the right location. As you can tell, we're doing this in reverse order of when we took it apart. When we took it apart, the water pump was the last thing removed. Therefore, it's the first thing we install. We follow that up with the crankshaft pulley, slide it in place over the keyway itself, take our 19mm bolt, hand start it, then run it down with an impact. After that, we're going to move on and put in our 14mm bolts that hold in our engine bracket. So with the engine mount in, we're going to install the tensioner. And the trick to this is getting the top and bottom roughly started at the same time. So take your bolt a slight ways out, run it over your stud, hand start your 17mm, which is going to be your pivot point, and then hand start your nut on top, which is going to be a 12mm. And then we're just going to simply tighten those down with the impact. Now with all 4 of the items bolted back into place, we've got the water pump, which we started with first on reinstallation, the crank pulley assembly, the engine bracket is going to have the engine mount to the vehicle, and then finally our serpentine belt tensioner. We've got it reinstalled into location. We're going to move back up top and reinstall the valve cover gasket and valve cover at this time. Valve cover gasket is reinstalled, and make a note, this is the point where we're going to put a little extra RTV glob here at the mating surface between the timing chain cover and the head itself, just to make sure we don't have any oil leakage out of there. So with the valve cover in hand, we're going to flip it over, line it up on our 4 studs, slide it down into place, and we're going to start with the 2 center bolts, 2 10mm. We're going to tighten that down first, and then we're going to go in an alternating pattern across the valve cover. Last thing to do, obviously, with the engine out of the vehicle for us is to put the coils back into place. There will be a few extra steps if this engine is still inside the vehicle, obviously with some harnesses. Everything else should be pretty simple from here on out. So we're gonna get these 4 10mm bolts tightened down and get this wrapped up for you.
So there we have it. First off, thank you, Kyle, for going through the process of how to replace this timing chain on this engine. Did a great job. Appreciate it. Otherwise than that, next thing to do is let's find a car for this, or we may sell it too. Who knows, one or the other. But we're looking for a project for this 1ZZ-FE. So hopefully something comes up like that matrix we've done already before. But if you want to see more content like this, make sure to click the like button, subscribe to our channel. And also check out our other videos. Like I said, we have the Matrix out there that we just put an engine into and revitalized back to life. And if you need any of the product in this video, please make sure to hit the description. We'll have the links to all of the product we use in this video. So please check that out. Otherwise, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time.